Hi, everyone, and welcome to The X, a podcast from inside Silicon Valley about how experience shapes everything, from products to businesses to entire industries. I'm Brian McLean, and I'm here with Demetrius Madrigal.
Mr. Theodore Twombly, welcome to the world's first artificially intelligent operating system, OS1. We'd like to ask you a few basic questions before the operating system is initiated. This will help create an OS to best fit your needs.
Okay.
Are you social or antisocial?
I guess I haven't really been social in a while, mostly because...
In your voice, I sense hesitance. Would you agree with that?
Is there something hesitant?
Yes.
I'm sorry if I was something hesitant. I was just trying to be more accurate.
Would you like your OS to have a male or female voice?
Female, I guess.
How would you describe your relationship with your mother?
It was fine, I think. Well, actually, I think the thing I always found frustrating about my mom is, if I tell her something that's going on in my life, her reaction is usually about her. It's not about...
Thank you. Please wait as your individualized operating system is initiated.
All right, everyone. So that was a clip from the movie Her, and it was a movie about artificial intelligence and kind of building a relationship with your AI. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. A lot about what's been happening in the news lately has been around the dangers of AI. And we've even done a podcast talking about those potential dangers. But, there's also some real positive stuff that can come out of it. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about kind of our AI wish list and some like really big opportunities that are right in front of us. So good morning, Dee. How are you?
Good. I think this is something that we should definitely think about and talk about because a lot of the AIs out there are not going to be. It's going to be a long time before we just have this general AI that can do everything, because every AI needs very specific training to do something. We need specific knowledge and need specific training. So for a very long time, it's going to be AIs that are very focused on a certain topic area. So we're gonna dig into some of the ones that we think would have the best impact for us.
All right. So I think we're just going to jump in and go, right down the list of some of the ideas that we generated. So you and I spent some time working on these and thinking through what we really want, what we think would actually help us in our lives and also help others. And based on our knowledge of technology and how things work and what the future looks like for AI, we generated this list. So I will kick us off and let's start with the first one. So mine is the calendar assistant. Now you might be thinking, oh, there's already calendar assistants out there. You can already ask, your Siri or your Amazon Alexa to do things for you and stuff like that. Yes, at a very basic level. But imagine this, okay? I would like to see a natural language calendar assistant that can adjust, add, shift my schedule around. So basically what I mean by that is like I could just spew out a sentence with a whole bunch of things that I want to do. So tomorrow I need to talk to D at 10 a.m. and then I need to go run over and pick up some medication for my grandmother. And then at 4 o'clock, I'm going to go and take my son to water polo class. Oh, and by the way, remove that appointment I had set for tomorrow. That was in the afternoon. I forgot the name of it. Oh, and by the way, can you also look back at my previous appointments, find out when the last time I saw my doctor and schedule a physical for me? Thank you. Bye. I want to be able to be at that level, D. I want to be able to just like spew stuff out and suddenly everything is dropping into my calendar. Everything is dropping in to the right places. It's on my mobile phone. It's where it needs to be. It even checks in with me and says like, hey, are you ready to review what your schedule looks like for tomorrow? Sure. And then suddenly it kind of spews that out to me. I want to have that level of complexity with my ability to talk to my AI for my calendar.
I think it's pretty cool. I don't interact with my calendar quite in the same way that you do. I know that you like to put in like these are the times when I'm going to work on this specific task. I don't like to do that because it stresses me out, and then I end
Yeah.
up being like, okay, oh man, I'm out behind schedule because something came up, and then it just kind of ruins my day. But I think for a lot of people who do that, I just use a task list instead of scheduling everything so that I
Yep.
try to make sure I get to everything within the course of the day. But I think for people who do that, who actually schedule specific tasks, or people who are managing their calendar for a variety of people, like family calendars and stuff, I think it can be really helpful for them.
Well, absolutely. I mean, when you have a family calendar, you have a work calendar, you have a personal calendar, you have one that is dedicated to like just the individual things that you want to achieve, one that is work related for the stuff that has to get done at work, and then you have one with a family calendar of like, oh, my son has this appointment or that appointment, and you have to blend them all together. And I have to actually dedicate time to sit down, look at the calendar every day, especially in the evenings, um, and say, okay, what's happening tomorrow? What time do I need to get up? How do I need to arrange my schedule and just get my head straight? And it'd be awesome to have a system that was accurately could just do that with natural language. I think that will get there because there's already like little hints and signs of it. Like for example, someone sent me a text the other day and it said, "Hey, do you want to meet up at 11:30?" And then immediately Siri said, "Would you like me to add an 11:30 appointment with X person into your calendar?" And I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, that's pretty good, right?" I don't use Siri for that, but like if I did, that would be a really nice thing. Now, it basically looked at what was happening in the actual text thread and then tried to accommodate accordingly. And the only reason why it knew that was because 11:30 was actually placed in there. So, and it said tomorrow. So I think if we can get to that point, I think it'll smooth things out, especially for people that are a little bit busier. But that's like one of the number ones on my list. I just kind of want to get that handled because that's like a daily thing for me.
Yeah, I think we're not that far off from that actually getting done. I think the two things that are needed for it are kind of the natural language processing, and it seems as though with transformer based models, kind of like ChatGPT, we're getting there. And I know that Google has theirs. I think I saw that Apple announced that they were having they were going to use a transformer based natural language processing system for Siri and their tools. So I don't think it's there very far off. It's actually one of the ones that's probably more doable in the short term than all of the other stuff that I think we're going to talk about.
I think so as well. So what was the one that was on your list? We'll just go back and forth. I think it'd be fun.
So I'm going right to one that I think that is kind of a no-brainer that everybody kind of wants. I want an AI housemaid. I want an AI-enabled system to help me clean my house or just keep my house clean. And sometimes when I think of this, I think of the Jetsons and Rosie the robot who's cleaning the house for them. For in order to get to this point where like I don't ever have to clean my house, it would probably have to be like a full blown robot or robotic system. But even if it wasn't that, even if it's just AI, it's integrated into my appliances, like my dishwasher. Can take a look at my dishes as it's going and determine, okay, that's clean, that's not. I need to do something a little different. Maybe change the water pressure in a certain way in order to get this particular dish the rest of the way clean.
Mm-hmm.
That would be great. You can imagine it for laundry, making sure that things are maybe applying temperature in a way that it gets the clothes dry but doesn't shrink them, or like more intelligent like wrinkle removers and stuff just from like the way that it's tumbling the clothes.
Mm-hmm.
There's all kinds of things that I think that like an AI system that can take actual like conditions into account in order to get where you're going on any kind of automated cleaning system would be fantastic.
We're seeing a little bit of that though, D. Because like for example,
Mm-hmm.
my washer is 3 years old and it does a couple of cool things. Like number one is it tells me like, hey, it's time to do a drum cleaning, and
Mm-hmm.
so it'll say before you wash your next load, it'll send a message to my phone. Before you
Yeah.
wash your next load, do run a drum cleaning. It automatically tells me when my laundry is complete and needs to be switched over to the dryer. Um, yeah, it does a couple of things. It doesn't do
Mm-hmm.
all of them like you're talking about, but it's kind of slowly but surely getting there to the point where I was like, hey, that's so cool that my laundry sends a push notification to let me know to walk outside and go change it.
Yeah.
Right. Even though that sounds very basic, it's like I never had that ever until like 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I we got a Roomba a couple months ago, and I've kind of held off on it because I think I was raised like if you're not doing it yourself, you're being lazy and you need to be more responsible. So
Oh, you need to get over that at this point.
no, I got
Yeah.
it. It's been great. So the thing for me is that the Roomba is actually provides not just frees up your time so you don't have to do it yourself, but it's also just better at cleaning than just using a traditional vacuum cleaner because it gets in places because it's small. It could get in places like under some furniture that I couldn't get to before, and it's like it notices when an area is extra dirty or something, and it like digs in. I've seen it do it, and it'll tell you in the aftermath also like, oh, we found this one like extra dirty spot where like
Mhm.
maybe got a bunch of cat fur there or something like that, and had to dig in a little bit and clean it up. But like it is actually producing a more clean carpet than the old style. So I
They
can
work
imagine that apply
fantastic.
that type of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they're really good. I mean, I've had a Roomba for 8 years. I've had the same one for 8 years, and all I do is continue to take it apart, clean it, and replace the parts that are inside of it. And I know that they
Hmm.
have much better ones now. But like just simply like pushing the button, walking away, coming back, and like seeing that thing like filled with the other cat hair or whatever it is. And it's like I don't have a filthy house or anything, but it really like you're right. It gets in there and just digs into either carpet or rugs. It works fantastic on the hardwood floors. I mean, it does a better job, I think, at sweeping than I do. Um, and it's like that's a great example of like if you don't have if your house is kind of set up for a Roomba, you could just push the button and leave and come back and suddenly your house looks clean. It's like, oh, this is cool. But it's like that first step has been around for I don't know, 15 years. And we haven't really pushed to the second step that you're probably hoping for, which is something that's just going to go into your bathroom. You close the door, you come back, and you have a sparkling clean bathroom.
Oh yeah, that's what I want. I want to like I want it to be a black box. I don't even know how it's doing it. I just come back, everything's clean.
Yeah, so I did see a robot. They're using it for industrial, so it's like actually goes into the ones over the bathrooms of Bart and places like that, and
Hmm.
they close the door. And it's the only problem is it's pretty large. It's actually like the size of a human, and it has a big arm on it and everything. And basically, it does it sprays the walls, it sprays the floor, it scrubs it, washes it, all kinds of stuff. But it's not like it's more industrial in the sense that like you don't mind if it's a little wet in there afterwards and stuff because those
Hmm.
those types of bathrooms are built to be more robust, right, than a standard one in your home. But
Hmm.
if they could shrink and kind of get that thing to the point where it can, I would say at the very least, if you can get one that scrubs your toilet, like grabs the side, the base, and the inside, and then cleans
Yeah.
itself, that's a step in the right direction right there.
Or the bathtub, because one of the things about the toilet is that the toilet has a lot of irregular surfaces and things. A
True.
bathtub tends to have the same shape, and it needs cleaning. I mean, as anybody who's active, doing things outside, comes in, they're going to be dirty. You're going to take a shower, and then by its very nature, it's going to get the tub dirty. So you need to having something that can keep that thing clean. I think would be awesome because I hate scrubbing out tubs
How
and
far off
toilets.
do you think we are of being able to get something that can help in the bathroom realistically?
Well, I think tubs are probably going to be a little bit easier because it is a normal kind of uh, surface that it has like a very predictable shape to it and things. I think getting into the nooks and crannies of a toilet is going to be more difficult, especially if there's like other furniture around it and stuff. So I think the tubs will probably be sooner, but I think with anything when it comes to robotics is going to take a bit of time
Mhm.
because you need to have all the different motors put in place. You need to think about how it's going to articulate. If it's articulating, you have to think about how it's going to secure to the ground, and then it's going to take up space. And people are going to want that in like sitting around. You need a place to put it. So there's a lot to think through, not just with how this thing will accomplish the goal, but like how it's going to fit into someone's home. You don't want like this full time machine sitting next to your bathtub 24/7.
Yeah, it's true. What do you think about like just like kind of like a quote unquote warning system, meaning like little RFID tags not RFID, but like some sort of Wi-Fi tags or something like that you could put that are waterproof within your bathroom, and it kind of just monitors cleanliness and just says like, oh, okay, hey D, it's time to clean your toilet. It's getting kind of nasty or whatever it is. So it's not visual, like meaning like you could look at it and see like your toilet's getting dirty,
No,
but
no, no. I think that's a terrible idea. I think
yeah,
you would be so like both anxious and disgusted. It's like
ashamed.
it's been like 3 days. What's going on? What's wrong with me?
Hey, you don't want your
Or
AI shaming you?
yeah, I don't want the AI shaming. I don't want to be like, oh my god, like I've got people coming over and like I haven't been had a chance to clean this thing today. So that's just I don't think I think that's just going to be a recipe for unhappiness.
Yeah, that's true.
You're just
Well,
telling me about the problem. You're not giving me a solution.
true. Yeah, I mean, so sometimes phase one of these things though is just like isolating the problem and letting you know, right? And then sometimes
Sure.
that's just like not to say that it's what we want, but it's the step in the right direction, right? Because I mean, you
Yeah.
see things like smart pods that go inside of the toilets that will spray stuff in there and wash the toilet out. It's like they're heading in that direction, they're fighting for it, but we haven't gotten
Yeah.
a solution. I thought the other day, I wonder if there's one where you could just like walk in and cover your entire toilet with something. You got cover the toilet, and then you push a button, you walk away, and then you come back, and the whole toilet's clean.
Yeah, I think when it comes to just intelligence without having a solution built into it, there's certain things like fire suppression or like your kid's not at school for some reason or something like that that you need to take action on because there's like imminent harm or something about it.
Mhm.
But for cleaning, it's just like no, you're not going to immediately die because your bathroom's not clean enough.
That's true. Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about the next one on my list here. So that's an AI vacation planner. So this is something that I imagine Airbnb will end up doing, or TripAdvisor, any of these places. They'll probably end up being something that they all do eventually. But
Mm-hmm.
imagine being able to use natural language, because I like the idea of natural language, to just verbally out loud say, I would like to go visit these three places. I would like to have it be nonstop flights. I like to stay in 4-star hotels. They must have views. They must have pools. They must have free breakfast. They must be X distance from these types of landmarks. I want to leave on these dates and I'm going with my family. Oh, and don't forget, you know, these are the special needs that we have. Great, go. And then that's it. I just walk away. And suddenly the system is like looking at the dates and scouring the hotels and looking at all my requests and stitching them all together, building an entire agenda, making sure that all those dates are available, not even offering something to me where they're not available. But then if it is not available, ask me if I could shift my schedule, and just gives me all this information. I literally go through and click approve, 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 approve. And then suddenly the entire vacation is set. That's it. It's set. And I just have to pay for it. I mean, that would be amazing. Because I mean, if you roll it back to the 1980s, 1990s, early 2000s, when we had uh, travel planners and things like that, that's what you would do. You would basically sit down and you just say all these things, and they would write them down and say, "Don't worry about it. Well, I'll take care of it." And they would either get paid a fee by you, or they get paid a fee by the hotel in which they got the booking done, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they would do all that stuff for you, and it felt good. You can walk away. They come back and say, "Okay, let's take a look at your vacation. Here's how it's going to be. You're going to leave on this date at this time, and you're going to have right." And then it went to self service. And it's like, okay, you just go into a website and you got to do all the homework and spend honestly 3 hours at night sitting around contemplating hotels, contemplating flights, looking at prices, seeing if it's within your budget, like all these things. And then you are done and you're like, oh, thank God I'm done. And then you hope that you got it right, meaning like everything kind of pieced together properly. Let's say you're doing a Europe trip or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to just dump that into AI and it just does it all for you, squares it all away, double checks it, verifies it, sounds game changing for vacation planning.
Well,
And I think we're close.
I think in order for something like this to actually be successful, it needs to go beyond just right now. You can do all this stuff with just setting, metadata settings within your searches, and then it surfaces, all right, these
Yep.
hotels meet your criteria and stuff. This is a system that I think, in order to be successful, it has to kind of get to know you and your family. It has to know, like, all right, well, uh, they went on this vacation. They like this hotel and not this hotel. We can tell that some of the differences between the two are this, and this. And just get smarter and better at like picking out what you're into and things like that. Not like knows your interests so that when it's looking through the things to do in that area, it knows to target certain things. If it doesn't do that, then it can kind of be like a little bit helpful in getting some criteria together, but uh, it needs to go a little bit beyond just the like filter for direct flights kind of
Oh,
stuff.
absolutely. Yeah. And that's what I'm talking about. Like next level. I mean, if you think about it, right? Like, so there's certain hotels that I've stayed at in the past that I've really, really liked. Like I stayed at the Omni a couple of times. I stayed at the Rancho Las Palmas in Palm Springs, Palm Desert area, right? It's a phenomenal hotel. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. If they looked at that and said like, oh, Brian stayed there and he rated it as, let's see, 5 stars or whatever, I can't give him any less than that because he really enjoyed that experience and I want him to have a great experience. Or it looks at a hotel that you stayed in Waikiki or whatever it is, and you said, no, it's kind of 3 stars. And then maybe it even looked at my comments and said, like, oh, my comments were the pool was dirty or something,
Yeah.
right? Then it'd be okay, it has to be a really clean pool. And it could use AI to kind of look at the pictures that people have posted of the pools and basically say, oh, look how clean this pool looks, or people have said clean multiple times. all that stuff, and it would just get smarter and smarter and smarter. And the fact is that it doesn't have to replicate that stuff for every person, because if it's looking at an Omni hotel, right, and it's saying like,
Yeah.
oh, phenomenal, full and everything, the next person who says they want to stay at a nice hotel, it'll just look at the data that was done on the Omni and say, hey, maybe you should stay at the Omni, right? So I think this would be kind of a game changer for it. And I don't think it can happen overnight. I think we're getting close though, in the sense that the natural language stuff is really, really good. You mentioned this. It's really, really good at interpreting what I said,
Hmm.
right? Maybe the results of like write me a book and that kind of stuff has been a little bit awkward at times, but actually recognizing my voice has been really good. So now we're just constraining it to certain criterion that we already have data for.
Now, let me ask you a clarifying question. Have you interacted with a voice-enabled kind of transformer system? Because does ChatGPT do voice, or is
Yes,
that just typed in?
it does. Yeah,
Does it?
I do it on the
Okay.
phone. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I haven't tried that out yet. I need to try it out. But
Yeah, it
if
works really well.
I thought the most impressive thing, I've said this a few times, is of ChatGPT was its ability to process natural language, and if you can add on voice recognition on top of that, then we're getting really close to like a voice-enabled AI system that could
Yeah,
work really
like
well.
2 years out. Like that's the way I see it. 2 years out, and I'll be able to do things. Now, the great part about like travel is that you're never going to book, well, maybe 20 years out, but you're never going to have AI book your travel without you ever looking at it. So,
No, probably
so
not.
so when you say, hey, do all these things, it's going to come back, even if you had to make slight modifications to your agenda or to the hotel, or it said like, here's option 1, 2, and 3, it's still saving you literally hours of time and allowing you to go deeper into your thinking regarding your planning.
Yeah.
So I think it's inevitable, and I think someone like Airbnb honestly is going to do it because I think they have the capacity.
Well, one of the things that could happen is it's really kind of interactive, so it can come back to you and say like, "Oh, here's some things." But I just noticed there's a concert from your favorite band there in that city that night. Would you want to go? And you would say
Mhm.
yes, and then it shifts your whole itinerary around.
Oh, that'd be amazing. So that's crazy, right? Because like,
Yeah.
I mean, it takes away some of the what do you call it, like spontaneity of travel, but not a ton. If it said like, hey, by the way, you just booked this trip and happens to be on the 4th of July, do you want to get tickets to the fireworks show on the beach? You might be
Hmm.
like, hey, thank you, that's awesome.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, it doesn't necessarily have to. Like it there. Every time I take a trip, there's certain things that are planned and certain things that are left open. So
yeah.
it's just like, all right, well, I'll plan this event and that event, and the other things will be left undone. Now, you imagine that with a tool like this, when it comes to like getting tickets or booking restaurants or stuff through APIs, it could do a lot of that stuff. Just needs an API with Ticketmaster in order to buy the tickets. Just needs an API with OpenTable in order to book reservations, or maybe with Uber in order to get your travel set up, or Hertz or whoever else. But I've seen also with the AI systems out of Google that
Mhm.
they have these assistants that can actually call up local businesses on the phone with an AI voice and book appointments for you.
Yeah, we're getting there. It's like one of those things where we have a lot of the components, and we just have to have somebody stitch it all together.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting and could be right around the corner.
Absolutely. So what's next on your list? Your wish list?
I'm already noticing that some of your stuff is a little bit more like fun and out in the world, and mine is a little bit more like around the home and like
Mhm.
probably not happening as quickly.
That's okay.
So my next one is an AI gardener, and this is partially because I don't
Mhm.
like working. I don't like doing yard work, and I don't like doing the gardening. But my partner Christine loves to, so she's got all these plants and stuff in the yard. But she's so busy with work that it becomes like, oh, can you handle this and handle that? And I'm like, I don't want to, but I'll do it. So one of the things I've noticed is that being good at gardening isn't simple and it's not easy. It's not just hey, you got to water the plants. So you have to take into account the temperature, the humidity, the time of year, the types of plants, the type of soil. It takes a lot of knowledge. So an AI system that can intelligently water based on your plant's needs, maybe it has sensors that can check how moist the soil is and the air is and the temperature and how much water this plant needs this time of year with this type of climate. that would be extremely helpful on its own because I've killed quite a few plants by overwatering, almost never
Mhm.
from underwatering, which I should
Like,
take as a sign, but I just haven't.
do you have a smart watering system though?
No, and
Okay.
you've seen our yard, and that's part of the issue is that the yard is so big that getting a smart watering system has been like turned into this multi-year planning thing of like, oh, well, we can use a soaker hose for this thing and then drip irrigation for that system. And then we got to run a hose all the way around the yard. We need to get a 100-foot hose in order to even get over there. And like, it's big. So it's a big undertaking. But even if we did have that, like you you really shouldn't just like set like, oh, water them every other day. Like it's not really supposed to be like that. You're supposed to test the soil each day and determine whether or not the that particular plant needs water. So
So they're pretty close. So we have the Ratio,
Mhm.
basically watering system, and the Ratio watering system is a it looks at the type of soil that you have. So it asks you
Mhm.
all these questions early on, like where do you live? What is the soil? What is the quality of the soil? What is your and then it looks at weather, climate, humidity, all these things. And basically it auto waters everything that we have in our yard. So it doesn't go as far as you're saying of like testing the soil every day. It doesn't have a sensor like in the soil, but you're
Mhm.
giving it all the information about your climate, you're giving the location, and we don't do anything anymore. So basically, I before we had construction where I had to turn it off, I don't think I watered anything for 2 years because the
Interesting.
system would look at it and say like, oh, it's about to rain in 3 days and we have high humidity right now, so we're only going to do a 1 minute watering system. We're going to leave it off until the storm is gone, and then we're going to come back and turn it back on once we know the soil is dry, based on the weather and based on the heat, based on the
Yeah.
humidity. So it does all that, and they keep coming out with new versions every year. But it doesn't get to the level where, like you said, you have sensors stuck in the ground everywhere, and it could look at those sensors. I would imagine it would get to that point, but like I don't do anything anymore. Like it literally
That's
goes
awesome.
it goes to zero. And what's great about it, and maybe you just never heard of this one, but like what's great about it is that you can get it in 8 zones or 16 zones. So every zone that you put it in, because farmers use it as well, is
Mhm.
you could say, oh, here, this zone over here is the same type of soil, but I'm growing vegetables. This zone over here is my grass. You take pictures of it, it sees it, and then when it's watering, it knows that, oh, that's grass, that's um, flowers, that's vegetable material, whatever it is, right? And it kind of monitors accordingly. So, and it's getting smarter and smarter, and
Yeah.
it does work. It works really well.
So that I think is awesome. That's the low hanging fruit. We need to really look into that. There is another level that I want. So I want automated lawnmowers. I want automated
Yeah,
weeders. I want an automated tool that take all of the yard waste and dump it into the green bins so that I don't have to. Like a lot of that stuff. I did a ton of yard work when I was young. My mom was really into it, so it was kind of like lots of weekends just getting dirty and sweaty in the yard for somebody else's creative vision.
sure.
And I hate it now. So all the things like getting out, pulling weeds, throwing them in, like stacking them up, throwing them in the bin, like all that stuff. If I had like a tool out there, I know I've seen some automated lawnmowers. They're not great yet, especially if you have like an irregular shaped yard or like uneven ground and stuff like that. But I think it's coming. And once it gets here, I'll be very, very happy, especially if something can go through and pull all the weeds. Oh my God, that'd be so helpful.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I looked at those automated lawnmowers at one point, and I realized that they don't actually collect into a bag. At least
Yeah.
the older ones did. They just dump the old stuff, and then it's supposed to kind of just die.
The
It
mulch.
cuts the
Yeah.
top of it, and it kind of mulches it by dumping and stuff, which I didn't want.
Mhm.
Also, too, you're right. I mean, you have to have it set up in a way that it knows where the zone is. Nothing can get in the way. You can't leave, you know, balls and jump ropes out. Like there's it's kind of set right now for a
Yeah.
little bit more specific environment. I think it'll eventually get there, but you know, that's a tough one because it's like if you're going to invest all this money into these robots basically to assist with all your gardening, how much would it cost to hire a gardening company just to come in and do it every 2 weeks,
Well,
right?
that's a good question. But if you're having somebody come in and do it every 2 weeks versus a one-time purchase of a system, then I think that's you're talking about like an ongoing continuous cost versus a discrete cost. So And there's other things that just like I don't necessarily want people like have to coordinate with people with their schedules, or like okay, there's people coming in the house I don't even or into the yard, and I'm like be surprised by them, all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I'm also like this is one of those things where I'm like, with the AI made, I'm like, I don't want to hire people to come clean my house. That's just like a bridge too far with the way I was raised. So just like
Yeah.
the do it yourself kind of thing.
Well, here's the thing: is like
Uh,
we have a low water yard up front, and then we have one that has
mhm.
it does have lawn in the back, but we're redoing the whole thing because we have to rethink it, And I feel like I'm the only person within 5 houses of the left and right of me that doesn't use a gardener.
Yeah,
Everybody
it's
everyone
true.
uses the same gardener. They come over, they're like, "What's up?" I always say hi to them. They come in, they trim the plants, they cut this, they do that. They're in and out in 20 minutes. They have a gate key and they just do their thing. And I don't because we like to garden. We actually like to clean things up, and it's not that hard to go and do the little things that we do. But like I do understand. I mean, like two people working full time, um, pretty much up and down the street. They're not even home most of the time. It's easier to pay, $100 a month or whatever it costs to have someone come for 20 minutes every 2 weeks and trim everything, cut everything, keep it all clean than it is to spend your whole entire Saturday doing it when you've been working all week. So I see where it actually turns in. But if you had to spend $3,000 on a system, like an AI system that can do all that stuff for you, and you still had to monitor it, you know what I mean? A little bit, maybe you'd be like, I don't know. I feel it's, how it is with these systems. It's like there's a tipping point. It's like, the cost of buying it and
Uh,
then maintaining it versus like just doing it yourself or having someone else help you.
well, that's let me see. If it's a $3,000 system versus $100 a month, that's 30 months. So that's
Yeah.
about 3 years before it's paid off. I think that's assuming this thing can last, 5 to 10 years, and that's well worth it. I think.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if especially if it does what it says it's going to do, right? Like, I think the
Hmm.
closest we got is the lawnmowers. Like the ones I see,
Yeah,
they keep getting better and better to the point where the lawnmower will go out, has a lithium battery. I mean, I think I saw one where it goes out, it cleans, it comes back, plugs itself in, and then sends you a text and lets you know that you need to charge the battery or empty out the container or rake up or whatever.
yeah,
But then I mean, depends on how big your grass is, right? So like I have small grass, right? It'd take me 10 minutes
yeah.
to cut it, right? So it's
Well,
like,
you've seen my yard.
yeah. Well, it's big, but
It's
you're
not
choosing
small.
you're choosing to have a more like what do you call it? Like rugged yard with lots of zones and stuff. I mean, I think if you were just like, oh, I don't want to do anything in my yard but put low water plants, then you probably wouldn't do anything.
Well, then you end up with a bunch of weeds and stuff too. So
Yeah.
there's always a trade off, and I kind of feel like, all right, well, you're not going to have somebody come to your house on a several times a week to water your plants. So you're already kind of like getting into some kind of AI automated system. So you might as well just like if you can have it in some kind of a walled garden,
Mhm.
pun intended, where they're all kind of on the same AI system and they're all kind of knowledgeable about each other. Like they like maybe the pruning thing knows that these things got planted or got pruned or watered on this day, not that day. They can make decisions kind of working together. I think that's what makes a lot more sense than having separate systems. And part of that separate system could be like the gardener who comes. So I don't know if it's just like one thing that does come up, and then we should probably just hire somebody to do, but we're stubborn about it. This is when we waited way too long to get the Roomba, but like we have this massive oak tree in our front yard, and it
Uh-huh.
just dumps massive amounts of pollen in the spring, and it's always like going out there and like it's like shoveling snow. There's so much of it.
Oh my gosh.
So we have to do this a couple times a year. Usually, I mean, in the spring it's the pollen, and it's in the fall, and it's in the fall it's the leaves. So even just as like a automated sweeper to get all this stuff up,
Yeah, yeah.
mulch it, and into the bin, that would be great. That would be fantastic. Also, because of the plants that we have, it gets all like in with the plants and into corners and stuff, and it becomes a huge pain to get it out.
Yeah, no, I I empathize. I mean, that's a lot. And also you have to wear a mask if you have any allergies at all. Cause like if I went into
Oh
that
yeah,
much pollen, I better take my pill or I better wear a mask. Cause like I definitely have allergies when it comes to that stuff. So
oh yeah. You
uh,
you can tell in the spring when it's coming. 'Cause, like not me, I don't really have allergies, but like Christine, for example, she starts to feel it coming. It's like an early warning system.
yeah, exactly. Okay, so next one on the list is AI predictive finance. So we've had this debate a little bit because, I like finance. I think it's fun to kind of look at how money can be shifted and moved and grown and that kind of stuff. And you have a little bit of a different view. You kind of don't want to think about it too much. And you said that probably the general public doesn't want to think about investing that much. So I think this is kind of the best of both worlds. So here's my idea. Here's what I hope someone will do. Um, is have an AI system that scans all of your bills, your investments, your checking accounts, your savings accounts, everything, and then provides optimization ideas that you can just approve or deny. And an example of this is, let's say you just got a bonus and your bonus comes in to your checking account and it knows it's a bonus, right? Because usually it says on there like bonus or whatever it is, or maybe you labeled it that way. It would look at the bonus. It would say, hey, here's my idea. You have two bills coming up that haven't even shown up yet on your credit card because they're pending, right? We're going to put some money aside so you can pay those because your bills need to be paid on time, and we'll pay those automatically for you. We also think you should take 20% of this and you should invest it into your investment account. And specifically, we think you should put it into this particular index fund. 10% of this we think you should take out and you should put it towards your mortgage, because data says that if you double pay a mortgage payment once a year, you can trim down your mortgage by 15 years, mortgage time by 15 years if you did this every single year. There's all these little rules and things that people have learned by studying, finance and stuff. But what if it just did all that for you? It looked at long term, looked at short term, gave you ideas, presented them all to you, and made it all in a super simple interface where it was just like approve, deny, approve, deny, approve, deny, and then you just walked away from it. You would be
Hmm.
fully optimized at the level of someone who's doing all the research and thinking around finance, but you don't have to do it. It'll
Yeah.
just it'll just offer it. And I feel like that's going to happen. QuickBooks and these companies, banks are really slow on this stuff, but like, some of the more tech driven companies, I think Chime and all that, they're going to get all this figured out, and then you're going to be able to just watch everything be optimized and grow and be efficient and never miss it. Like this idea of missing a bill because you had the money but you forgot is ridiculous in this day and age. It should
Yeah.
automatically make a minimum payment, send you and say, hey, by the way, please make a minimum payment. I mean, your minimum payment was made because you forgot to pay this bill. Don't worry about it. It won't ding your credit, right? The fact that like literally a friend of mine missed a payment because they just on vacation didn't think about it, and the bank said, oh, well, you didn't set up minimum payment settings. It's like, why would that be a setting? That should be standard to ensure that my score stays high.
Well, you know why? Because they want to upsell it, or they
Of
want to
course,
charge you the late
fee.
fee.
Yeah, the late fee, right? But here's the thing: AI can solve all that and get rid of all that stuff, especially if you allowed the assistant to attach um, to your banks and stuff like that and manage it for you. And that's why I think it'll end up being a third party company or tech company or something like that
Yeah.
does it, because the incentive to make you super efficient and never miss a payment is much lower on the bank side than it is on the
So
tech.
I feel like we're not that far off with this. I think you can get 80% of that there with it now. You can set up automatic payments, you can set up alerts, you can set up all kinds of things. Uh, it, the thing about finance in general, as far as from an industry perspective, is that there's not a lot of incentive for them to improve the user experience. It's the kind of thing where like people have their bank accounts and they pay their bills because they need to, not because they it's giving them a good experience. So I noticed this a while ago that the amount to which usability, for example, matters depends on how essential the tool is. So like usability on like an entertainment system is going to be a lot better than like on an ATM generally, because you need to use the ATM no matter what. It's not like if you don't like this video game, you'll just stop playing it, but you can't do that with an ATM, or you can't do that with
Yeah.
pumping gas or things like those. The they don't have a financial incentive in order to like do things like automatic payments, because they know that they'll get paid anyway, and they're going to charge you an extra 15-20 bucks on a late payment thing, or an overdraft thing. There's no reason for overdrafts to exist. If you have money in another account, you can just transfer over. That can just all be completely automated, but they don't really have an incentive to do that.
Mm-mm.
A lot of these AI tools, this is I think finance is one of those areas, finance and law, and we should talk about this at some point, where they're so kind of rule driven and there's not a lot of judgment decisions to be made other than maybe investing, that it's ripe for easy AI implementation. It's like, all right, you have these bills, they need to be paid. Here's your source. Just monitor it. Let me know if it gets low or things need to get moved around. And from a simple perspective, as far as just maintenance, it's low hanging fruit from an AI perspective. And I want this
100%. 100%.
badly. I want this badly for my mom.
Well, that was the thing.
Because
Part of this actually idea came from the fact that you were telling me about some of the experiences you have, like managing
yeah,
her stuff, right? And it's like, why is it that hard? Like, it shouldn't be that hard. It should just be automatically done, and you could just take a look and make sure it's correct.
it doesn't have to be, but half of it is just explaining to my mom what's going on or what she should do with her money, or she's got this amount of money who's just sitting there in an account. She should get it into investment or something. And explaining the investment, like that's a lot of it. And if an AI could do some of that lifting, so that it's just like, all right, well, she can read this thing on her iPad, and it'll explain to her why her money was just invested into a mutual fund or an index fund or something like that. Then I don't have to,
Yeah.
and that just makes my life easier.
I would venture to say that if this was done properly with a proper UI, I think that it would educate along the way. I think it would elevate
Yeah.
the general audience, the general consumer, on why it made a choice to make a double payment on your mortgage, or why it moved it into a mutual fund, or why it found a 4.55% return on investment savings account rather than the 0.01 you're getting at your local bank,
Hmm.
right? Like, there's a
Yeah.
reason people shift their money around like that, is because they're trying to optimize, right? And if it educates you and says like, oh, not all banks are equal, and you're like, oh, didn't know that. I thought
Yeah.
all banks had the same rate.
One of the things that it can do that I don't think people are taking enough advantage enough is determining whether or not something should be financed or whether it should be paid for.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes down to how big the purchase is, what the interest rate is versus what the expected rate of return would be on some kind of investment. So if you can get an interest rate that is lower than what you expect to get from, I mean, even like a treasury bond, right? I mean,
Uh-huh.
that's probably a bad example because the interest rates are so low. But if you can, if your interest rate on your investment is, or not, your return on your investment is higher than your interest rate for the finance, then it makes sense to finance it. Otherwise, if you have the money, it makes sense to pay it off
Hmm.
because that way you're saving money. Just that amount of optimization within your system over time can save quite a bit of money.
I would agree. I think it's right for it. I think there's a couple good ones already. I forgot what the name of the company was. You know, the one that like attaches to every single thing you have, from credit cards to everything. It tells you what your net value is. It monitors where your money's going, how much you're spending
Well,
every month.
there's the traditional one is Mint.
Mint, yeah. So Mint
Yeah.
originally did that, and they did a really good job. I remember so many people using it that I know, just because they were like, I just don't know what my total, what do we
Hmm.
call it? How much I'm worth, and I
Yeah.
also don't know where my money is going every month.
I feel like Mint's been stagnant for a while. They got acquired, and I feel like they went to the point where, again, there's not a lot of motivation for them to change and improve because they're kind
Yeah.
of the only game in town. So we'll take some of these startups. I do want to acknowledge when it comes to managing investments, there is a bit of AI danger here, both because if something like this takes off and everybody's using the same AI system, it could end up artificially inflating some market values
Yeah.
because the AI is saying like, oh, we're all going to put our money into these mutual funds or index funds or what have you. Those are all invested in the same companies, and then everybody's invested in those companies, and the value of that stock goes up just because everybody's invested in them, not because of the performance of the company, which is kind of what I think happened during the pandemic. We saw these crazy bumps.
Well, that already happens right now with people investing into mutual funds and S&P 500 and
Yeah,
401ks, right?
and the meme stocks, we kind of see that too, right? Where
Yeah.
it's just like it's just because of the brand value of that company, not because of the production of it. The danger is if it gets it wrong, and that thing. So if it's you imagine, all right, well, we've got this one or two AIs that are managing all of everybody's investment portfolio. They all get invested in the same things, and then those do poorly, then that can wipe out a lot of savings because not a lot of divestiture within the, like, everybody's kind of invested in the same things, and if those fail, then everybody kind of takes a crash.
Yeah.
Uh, then there's the other danger where, like, if they're all invested in the same thing, then this is more of kind of abstract societal stuff. And there's like a lot of stuff that's going to be out there that's good, that's not going to get investment money, that's not going to get capital for developing new products and things like that. So that's just kind of some things to keep in mind. We saw some of these when it came to high frequency trading and stuff, some of the effects of that. This could be that continued.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, like I said, there's always downsides to these things, but if you could think about the potential for the upside, sometimes they can outweigh it, you know. But
Yeah.
so what's next on your list? I only have one left after this.
So my next is, so I have this pet peeve, right? I don't think I'm the only one. I hate when I'm sitting on a traffic light and I'm waiting, and maybe there's other people who are also waiting on other parts, other sides of the intersection, and literally nobody is crossing the intersection because the lights are just like, oh, I'm gonna keep this one green, even though there's nobody there and
Yeah,
there's nobody coming.
because they're timer
Or
based, right?
yeah, a lot of them are timer based. Maybe they're sensor based, but the sensors don't work that great. They can't anticipate. They don't seem to anticipate like incoming flow of traffic. I'm like, if it's 10 o'clock at night and or 11 o'clock at night or 1 in the morning, and I come up on a red light that's on a timer that I have to wait like a minute or so, like it should. I mean, ideally, without AI, just make it a stop sign because there's no like within the law to treat it like a stop sign. You stop, you make sure there's nobody coming, you can go ahead and cross.
Yeah,
But I can imagine, especially living in a city like the Bay Area, outside of San Francisco, especially in the Bay Area, where there's so much traffic flow going on. If you can optimize it just a bit better, that would make everybody's life a little bit easier. It would get like deliveries where they're going faster. It would cut down on fuel costs. Waiting, I hate the waiting when there's no purpose behind it. If I was waiting because there's a lot of traffic flowing the other way, I can understand that. That makes sense.
yeah,
If I'm waiting and there's nobody on the other side, that just drives me nuts. So something like that can a tool, AI system that can take into account the flow of traffic, can optimize it based on time of day, how busy it is, how fast the traffic is moving, how many vehicles there are, that kind of stuff. Then that I think I would love that.
oh, I think that would be awesome. There's so many times that I've middle of the night, it's late, you're coming back from like a trip or something, and you stop
Mhm.
somewhere and you sit there for like 2 minutes and you're like, why am I sitting here? There is no one around. And
Yeah,
I understand though the upgrading of that system is very complicated. Like you screw that up and accidents happen and things like that. So I
sure.
can understand that stuff probably would take quite a bit of time to get implemented, but I understand your perspective on that.
Well,
Um,
I feel like it's the kind of thing also where you can start small with things that aren't super dangerous. Of
yep.
just like, let's just identify, some clear and obvious situations where this light doesn't need to be green. That's it.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Right. Start small and go from there. And I think one of the hard parts about doing this is that you're trying to, is this a government, like does this government build the system? Can a
Yeah.
tech company build it and they license it out and then they have control over it? Right. So I could see there's a lot of regulatory issues probably
Well,
associated
we
with these things.
we already talked about finance
Uh-huh.
as an example of something that kind of becomes stagnant because if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Hmm.
And the finance companies are going to make their money no matter what, so they don't feel like they need to like go too far as far as disrupting things. And for
Yeah.
them, that's just like this feels like all downside. It's kind of the same thing with traffic light management. It's just like it's nobody's direct problem. It's just an
Uh-huh.
annoyance for everyone. So nobody kind of, I think, takes it on and tries to fix it. And if you went to a lot of municipalities and tried to sell this, unless it was someplace like Atherton where they're just kind of bored,
Hmm.
then it probably wouldn't take off. Like they're like, oh, I've got other problems to fix and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'll get to this eventually, and that's one of the reasons why it stagnates. But it's also one of the things where it's like this is a um, quality of life improvement that would affect everyone, and both just as experientially and just economically, as far as the taking less fuel and time and creating less pollution and everything all at the same time.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Let's get down to my last one. So the last one that I had on my list was an AI medical data reviewer. And so the idea behind this is You go to your doctor and you say, hey, my ankle's hurting, let's say, for example. And they say, great, I'm going to send you down to get an x-ray. And then we think you might have tore something, so we're going to give you an MRI. Like this is just a standard example. So you get an x-ray, you get an MRI. 2 weeks later, you go back and have a follow-up appointment. They sit down, they look at the x-ray, look at the MRI. They said, based on what we can see here, it seems like you have a torn whatever, right? I don't even know what's in your ankle. So, anyways, and they make this diagnosis. Maybe they do some other tests or whatever it is, and that's it. And then you kind of work through a treatment on it. It'd be really cool to have a system that actually examines those X-rays, those MRIs, those tests, and the written notes, and looks at everything and double checks it. And
Mm-hmm.
just saying like, hey, I could see a fracture here, I could see a torn ligament here. Also, based on your diagnosis, this is, there's a 75% chance that this is the likelihood. This is the likely problem that occurred, and then just presents that information to the doctor, not you, and just says, hey, this is what we're thinking. Other possible causes are X, Y, and Z. Two things are
Yep.
happening in this situation. One is you're getting someone who's a system that can double check and is incredibly accurate these days on reviewing MRIs and X-rays. And they already have this technology happening. Like they're already helping out X-ray techs and stuff like that by analyzing and finding problems, finding tumors, finding things like that. So you already have that, and then provides that double check. And then in addition to the double check, every time it says, let's say there's a 75% chance that you are correct that they have this particular issue, here are the other potential other issues. You're educating the doctor on things that they don't see very often. So I feel like there's room for this to evolve and be the assistant, the doctor's assistant.
Mm-hmm.
We've already seen people mentioning that, like, the majority of all injuries or mistakes and problems that occur, for example, during surgery, happen to do with not having a proper checklist
Yeah.
and, forgetting to do, step number 47 of a long surgery or whatever. AI can help you with that, right? So I think there's a big opportunity in this space. Very slow to adopt, probably, which would make
Yeah.
sense because it's medical. But this is concrete data, right? An X-ray, an MRI, a note saying patient says it hurts in this particular spot. Pictures. At this point in our technology advancement, uh, we do have the capability to look at pictures and find things in them. So I think we're ripe and ready for it.
Yeah, I think that there's a few things here. I think that medical is another area that ultimately doesn't advance as quickly as it should, especially when it comes to managing data. And this is something that can do it, because one of the things if you look into your medical record, a lot of it is like, all right, well, this doctor entered this and this doctor entered that, and then maybe you went to the hospital and they entered this, and it's pretty disparate, and it needs some kind of a smart aggregation process in order to kind of like, all right, let's get it organized so it's easily
Mhm.
consumable. So any like new doctor you're coming to or a doctor you haven't seen in a while looks at it and says, okay, I get an overall picture of everything that's going on. Like I shouldn't have to every single time I go to the doctor kind of re-enter like these are the medications that I'm on. It should be simpler than that. So
Well, I
that's
find
something.
that I find that if I have to go to multiple doctors for any particular issue, I have to retell the story from beginning to end to everyone I meet.
Yes. Yes. And then you have to go and backfill your primary care physician on what you've learned from your previous physician,
Yep.
because he's not monitoring everything that happens on your account, right? He's just
No.
like when it comes up, he takes a look at it. A lot of times it's not going to happen until you're actually in the room with them and you're like, oh yeah, this doctor said this. And he was like, oh, I didn't know that. Uh, there's another aspect of this though, and that is on the user side of things. Scheduling appointments. This happened for me with like my elderly parents, and my father passed away a little while ago. But like the experience within that was like, all right, well now I've got to book all these appointments, got to book all these things, got to figure out care, transportation, got to do all these things in order to coordinate. Maybe I've got to move some appointments around. And then you have to interact with the insurance companies who decide that they don't want to pay for these things, even
Mhm.
though they've been collecting money from you for a long time. The, the issue with insurance companies is they actually have no financial incentive to pay out, only to take in. So
Mhm.
if they can avoid paying out, they're absolutely going to do it. They have no financial incentive for doing so. So having an AI assistant that can help you book appointments, move them around, communicate with doctors, communicate with insurance, and say like, "Oh, hey, you said that you were not going to cover this, but according to this, you have to." That kind of stuff, an AI system that can help with that, I think, would be absolutely transformative.
Yeah, there's also this weird gap that happens. Like, have you ever gone to the doctor and they were like, "Oh, yeah, we recommend you get, let's say, a foot wrap or something," because let's say you pulled your ankle or something like that, and then they say it usually costs about like $500 or something. Let's say they say it, and they go, but we're not sure if your insurance covers it. We'll have someone look into it and get back to you in a day or two.
Yeah,
And you're like,
yeah,
wait, what? Isn't it concrete based on your insurance card, based on your group number, that the system should be able to automatically populate on the doctor's screen whether or
yeah,
not his choice for your foot wrap or whatever it is being covered. Now, I understand the flip side of this. Flip side of this is that if the doctor clicks on that and it says it's not covered, they won't offer that treatment to you. And maybe you need that treatment, right? So I understand that. People have said like, doctors should be blind to costs. They should be focusing on just what is the right direction for you.
yeah. Well, I mean, it comes down to like your insurance company shouldn't be making medical decisions for you. It's like, oh, you don't
Yeah.
need that. We're not doctors. We're accountants.
Yeah.
But our accounting determined that you don't need this life saving treatment, so we're not going to cover it. So that's just ridiculous because that's not how reality works. Uh, but if it is, again, it's a huge for myself. Sometimes I have to look and see like, oh, what is covered? It's buried in some kind of like unreadable document that's on their website, and then later on, it will say on your plan detail that this thing is covered, but then you go to book to bill for it, and then they're like, oh no, that's not covered, so it's not applied to your deductible, and then you got to fight them on it. Having an AI system that's just fully aware of what plan you have can tell you when new plans become available that might be a better fit for you based on how you're billing. For example, like,
Mhm.
oh, hey, we noticed that you're not meeting your deductible this much. Maybe you can change to this other plan that does a better job for you. Or maybe you got this diagnosis. So when your open enrollment period comes up, maybe this is a better plan for you. Those are all things that I think some kind of a medical assistant that can take all of this information and present it to you in a way to help you make decisions and then help you execute those decisions. That I think again, I think it's so huge, so huge.
Oh, it's a $1 trillion industry right there, right? Like
Yeah,
it's a big, big opportunity. All right, so let's wrap up with your last one, which not necessarily is your number one or anything, right? It
I mean, it might be.
might be. I saw it and I was like, really? Is this that big of a deal to him? But I guess so.
Well, think back to when we went to San Jose State.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So
Oh, I
here's the
know,
thing,
I know.
right? Or when we used to go to the city a lot more, we don't go to San Francisco quite as much these days. But
Yeah.
so my last one is an AI parking assistant. So this is another pet peeve. A lot of mine are about like getting rid of the things that I just don't want to deal with. So uh, it's just like knowing whenever you go to an event, whenever you go into a densely populated area, maybe you're going into San Francisco, or maybe you live on the East Coast, you're going into New York City or something like that, and you need to park your car. And it can tell you where there's a parking spot, either in a parking garage that might be kind of full, or somewhere on the street, or maybe there's someone who's renting out who will rent out like a parking spot on their property. Like,
Hmm.
oh, hey, I've got I'm out of town, so you can park in my driveway for a week or something like that, and it's built
Yeah.
into this AI or this app. Just like opening up an app and just being like, or being integrated in your car and just being like, hey, I want to park near this restaurant or near this concert venue or near whatever, or my friend's house. And it'll say, okay, here it is. I remember when Christine lived in San Francisco, there were times when I'd have to like circle around her neighborhood for like 20, 30, 40 minutes in order to find a parking spot. And
Oh,
it was
yeah.
ridiculous. And I
I did that
hated
every
it.
week, every
Oh,
single
yeah.
week. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And some people
Yeah.
do
When
it.
your
Some
wife lived
people
in the
do it
city.
every single day in San Francisco.
Yeah, it's horrible. And if you could do that, even just like, all right, well, I'm going to a hockey game, I'm going to a concert, I'm going to whatever, and just tell you like, here's a parking spot that's open in this parking garage or on the street somewhere. Just go there and park. And maybe there can be, once you have automated parking systems, you can just get out of your car and it goes and parks in that parking system itself, and it just is like automated valet. Yeah, if you can just get it, it just drops you off at your venue or
Uh-huh.
at the airport and
Yeah.
goes and parks itself somewhere. Then and if you have someone that's like, oh, you can only park here for 2 hours, You have an automated system that can tell you, like, hey, you need to go move your car, and here's where you can move your car to. Or if the car can park itself, drive and park itself, it just goes there and parks itself. You don't have to
Abs-
worry about it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's a great idea. I mean, there are some places now that kind of shocks me. Sometimes you'll go on Google and they will say like only 4 spots available and stuff like that. Like some really advanced parking garage or something. But
Yeah.
also, it's complicated because if you're driving up to the city, for example, and it says 4 spots available, well, in 10 minutes there could be no spots or there could be 40 spots. So it's changing so quickly that
Hmm.
it's almost like most important within the last 2 minutes of getting there, right? Like you're
Yeah.
trying to find it, right?
But if it had the data, it can tell you, like, okay, here's the likelihood you're going to find a parking, or how long it would take you to find a parking spot for one to open up. Maybe if it's intelligent enough, it can determine, like, all right, well, this is what the turnover looks like and how quickly these spots turn over. It's one of the issues with San Francisco is that people park their car and leave it there for 2 weeks,
Uh huh.
so the parking spots just don't open up. And then, in the Bay Area, most of California, I think pretty much the entire West Coast, like the public transit is just not very efficient, and a lot of times it's pretty bad experience. So it's one of the reasons I don't like to take it.
Hmm.
And but it's just to provide something like that gets cars off the road, gets them parked much more efficiently and quicker, and things. You don't have cars that are circling around. You don't have cars that are fighting for spots as much, or just kind of camping out and waiting and stuff, then I think that would help quite a bit. And for me, just kind of like I hated that circling around, and I don't go to the city as much as I used to, or
Yeah.
Oakland or other places, just because I'm like I don't want to have to fight for parking.
Yeah, no, it's true. It
Yeah,
is a big thing, and that ties into the, obviously like automated driving and, all the different technologies to kind of assist with mobility, right? Moving people
yeah,
around, getting them to where they need to be, making it easier, making it safer, making it faster, making it cheaper, like all those components. And I like it, but I don't know. These were good. I would love to hear from our listeners because we get quite a few listeners every week that listen to the podcast. I would love to hear like what do you want to get fixed through AI? Like if you were, thinking about the positive side of AI rather than the negative side of AI, and you said like, hey, I want something to make my life easier. What is it? And if you have ideas, we'd love for you to go under our YouTube channel at the X Podcast and leave a comment on this one and say like, I would love to see X or Y or Z, and we'll mention it on our podcast if time permits or it comes up. So that would be great. But I think this would be a wrap for today. What do you think, D?
yeah. I think so. I think we covered quite a bit.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you everyone for taking the time to listen. We really appreciate it. We are on YouTube, and also Demetrius is just getting into Threads a little bit. So we'll probably have an announcement regarding that in the future about following us on Threads, even if it's just our personal accounts. So you can see how we think about some of these technologies and just different things that are going on in the industry. But also, if you found this podcast interesting or informative, it helps us a great deal if you subscribe or leave a review on whatever platform you use. Thank you all, and we'll see you all next week.